Okay, I'd like to call to order the May 17, 2018 Board of Supervisors meeting. Please stand for the pledge. Mr. McPhillips, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence for those serving our country both at home and abroad. And let's keep those folks in Hawaii in mind as well. They're going through a lot. Thank you. Okay, first up on tonight's agenda is announcements. Ms. Frescator.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow supervisors. I have some announcements on behalf of our Parks and Recreation Department. Rubber Ducky Regatta tickets are still on sale for the event on May 20th. Tickets are $5 a duck or five ducks for $20. It's a great family outing. I'm going to try to get in the water this year, so don't quote me on that.
I've been hearing that for a couple of years now.
All right. Discount tickets are available at Parks and Recreation for Regal. They're $9.50. Amusement parks, local attractions, and the price list is online. You can get the tickets at the Parks and Rec Department from Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Or check online or call the office. Bucks County 2018 annual dog licenses are available for purchase also, same hours. Memberships to the Bark Park are available. New members must complete an application, provide proof of rabies, inoculation, or current dog license. Call for times and to register at 215-443-5428. We're asking volunteers for the community park pickup being held April 1st through May 31st. Volunteers are needed to clean up around the schools, parks, highways, train tracks. It's a great, if you have younger kids, grandkids, or children of your own that you'd like for them to do some community service, it's a good idea to maybe volunteer for this particular event. Save the date. Warminster Day will be held on Saturday, June 9th from 11 to 4 p.m. at Warminster Community Park. Join us for our 15th anniversary celebration with family activities. There's going to be pie contests, so it's going to be really interesting. For more information, contact the Parks and Rec Department. The only other announcement I have today, my fellow supervisors, Mr. McPhillips and Mr. McKee, we attended the scholarship lunch for William Tennant and for Archbishop Wood. And now they have a new one. It's called Women to Women.
It's sponsored. Excuse me. It's sponsored by the Bucksmont Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. And they have a new scholarship this year. It's called Women to Women, and it's for single moms to go into Bucks County Community College that are, juggling a home and family and all that. And I had the great honor to be able to present those two awards. So I just wanted to mention that, and it was a really nice event.
Sure
Thank
was.
you. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Monroe.
None this evening.
I want to mention, Mr. Monroe, you look very distinguished with your new glasses on. I've never seen you in those before.
Because of the screen, the presentation we're getting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. McPhillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Carol Lewis of the Bucks County Seventh-day Adventist Church for allowing me to use their meeting room last week to meet with Township residents. This is something that I've been doing for a while now. I always appreciate the opportunity to meet and talk with residents, and I appreciate Carol for allowing me to use the church as a venue. Nativity of Our Lord Catholic Church is having their annual carnival. It's coming up, and I plan to once again work the funnel cake booth, so stop by if you can. The carnival runs from June 8th, 9th, and 10th, so it's always a good time to stop by.
Thank you, Mr. McPhillips. Mr. Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to welcome the new businesses to town. There's two in the past month, B&B Real Estate's at 250 West Street Road, and SB Soccer, which is an elite a soccer training program, is at 811 Nina Way. Also, want to just mention to everybody that at our monthly Economic Development Committee meetings, we've been having speakers come in. Last month, Mr. Altamari, who owns multiple properties around town, came in and spoke. Last week, we had a couple different businesses come in, and next month we're going to have others. But I invite the public to come to the meetings. We do have a couple people who come out on a regular basis, but you get an opportunity to meet some of business people who are looking to come to town and learn a little bit about their businesses and what they're looking for. And it's always quite interesting. And hopefully next month we'll have some news for you on a business relocating. It's a small business, but a fun one nonetheless. That's relocating from Feasterville to Warminster here this summer. So,
Any clues?
yeah, Bustleton and Street,
Okay.
where they're putting that Wawa in. Something's leaving there and it's coming here. So
Okay.
I don't want to step on his toes and announce before he does.
Okay,
But
sounds exciting.
he'll be coming in. So want to invite everybody to those meetings. Those are the second Monday of each month. The next one is Monday, June 11th. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I have a few announcements. I want to start by sending out condolences on behalf of the board and the staff to Amanda Zimmerman, our Assistant Township Manager, whose grandfather recently passed. So I'd like to send our condolences out to Amanda. And Catherine McGovern, thank you for being here tonight, Catherine. Catherine to sit in for Amanda. I also have a couple other, one I wanted to mention, the Chamber Luncheon today. Kathy gave out the awards for the Women to Women, and Dan and I had the honor and privilege to give out the awards to they pick a student every year from William Tennant High School, from MBIT, and from Archbishop Wood to give a scholarship to. And these are really exceptional. It must be a tough decision for them to make because these are exceptional, exceptional people. And I got to talk it for a couple of minutes, and you know how much I love to do that. I was telling the group, this can be a really difficult job for us to have up here as supervisors. People call us all the time and yakking the phone at us, but to go to something like this and be able to participate in this today is the best part of this job, the best. I mean, there is so much hope for the future of this country with people like we honor today. I think one was going to Villanova and one was going to Drexel. One gal who's going to Drexel in particular, she didn't know English when she came to America. She was an every honor society you can think of, science, mathematics, top of her class, just truly exceptional people. So,
And the trades.
and there was one fellow that's going to college because he wants to be a construction manager, which is great. That's right up my alley. Told him I'll have a little work for him next summer. But really exceptional students. So that's the best part of this job to go participate in that. It really is. It's a thrill. So that being said, I also have one more. We don't get too many of these letters, so I really would like to read this. I received a letter from a resident of Villas of Five Ponds. It's dated back in April, but I haven't had a chance to read it at our meeting, so I'd like to take a second. It's addressed to the Board of Supervisors. Gentlemen, after a terrible weather month of March of 2018, continuing right up to April 2018, I looked over the golf course itself during a recent round and would like to commend the golf course groundskeeper for a superb job on the course, both in appearance and in play. The greens are in perfect condition, scoring a 10 on a scale of 0 to 10, being the best. All the greens merit a 10 as well. The rough areas are cleaned up, the practice area is in good to go, and visual impact of the whole course is breathtaking. Kudos to the entire crew. And this is signed by Larry McHugh. I want to thank you, Larry, because most letters we get are not nice like this. So, and kudos to those guys over there. They're doing a terrific job with maintaining, which I think is the best golf course in Bucks County. So the only other announcement I have is we had an executive session prior to tonight's meeting. I'm going to ask Mr. Bartle to cover it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board met in executive session beginning at 6 p.m. this evening in this building in a room adjacent to this one. The board discussed three matters. One, a potential matter of litigation, another, a personnel matter, and another, a matter of litigation, which is the Warminster Township versus Walter and Michelle Studley, and that's in the Court of Common Pleas of Bucks County, 2008-06607. Each of those matters is a legitimate subject of executive session pursuant to Pennsylvania's Sunshine Law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartle. And next up on tonight's agenda is presentations, and item A is the capital improvement plan and road update. Eric Hines, our Public Works Director, is here to give us an update. Thanks for coming, Eric.
Thanks for having me, everybody. It's nice to see everyone. So we'll start out by taking a brief look back at last year's road program. Last year, we paved 16 streets, a little over 5 miles of roads. It's down in the southwest corner of the township, county line and Valley Road area. We were able to install 50 new ADA compliant ramps as part of the federal mandate for ADA ramp compliance. And the percentages of roads have increased in that sector up to 79% for rating in the moderate to good range, which was down in like the high 30s before we started. A covers last year's program. So this will be 2018. Our goals are to execute resurfacing treatments on targeted roads following the 6-year road improvement plan, secure maximum use of all in-house resources, which we pave in-house, as you know, maintain open lines of communication with the residents during construction, which is very important.
Hey, Eric, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
With the communication, can you talk about what you do with a typical street, as far as notifying residents and working with them?
Sure. Probably about a month in advance, we type up a letter to the residents informing them that the road program is going to begin in their neighborhoods soon. We let them know that it would be really important for them to follow the no parking signs. Also, I send them a copy of contractor guidelines that I came up with, which are, it's important for the residents and the contractors to kind of be on the same page as far as where they're allowed to park their equipment, how it's protected and safe from kids getting on it and stuff like that. So we send that out. We also send the list of roads that are going to get paved and the limits of those roads. So it's really informative, and you don't usually get a whole lot of questions about it. People are just glad to know.
Happy to get their roads paved.
Yeah. So this year we'll do 19 roads, and this will be in the northwest corner of the township, the Valley Road Bristol corner of the township. It's going to be probably slightly less than 5 miles of roads, just because we have some roads that are wider, like Lavera. That lessens your mileage when you get wider roads. And the part of that has actually just begun today, as St. David's Avenue was milled today. Right now, before we even really get started, there's a high percentage of very poor roads in this sector of the township. When we're finished, we expect that to jump up into the mid-70s for good roads. There's the map of the roads highlighted in green. Kind of hard to see the names. South Norristown Road was added as an alternate to our bid this year. We were able to find the funding to do that. Kind of
Is that in process now?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Actually
already
pretty
done.
much ready to be paved.
Because that was really a problem.
It was hammered, yeah, really bad. And when it stops raining eventually, we'll pave that probably Tuesday or Wednesday next week.
Hey, Eric, can you actually switch back and just, so the people at home, can you read off the names of the roads that are being done in 2018?
Sure.
And just to clarify, when you read off these names, it's not necessarily the entire road. There are certain segments that are getting done of every road. But if you
Sure.
just hit the highlights.
Mulberry Circle, Gray Lane, Sycamore Court, Hartsville Circle, Southern Court, Kemper Drive, Windmill Road, Wheatfield Lane, Deer Run Road, Carousel Drive, Red Barn Road, Lavera Road, George's Lane, Sandy Lane, Weber Road, Northfield Circle, Duffy Lane, St. Charles Avenue, 2 pieces of St. Charles Avenue.
Thank you.
Can I have a quick question about that?
Sure.
Do we, when the roads are being done, do we coordinate with the school district with respect to like school pickup and all that kind of stuff?
It's a really good question, yes. I call the school district weeks in advance, talk about the schedule, they get all the same information, and then the bus drivers are told, find another way around. And even where we're milling and paving, the road is not completely closed to traffic. If folks got to get out of their house, we accommodate them. And same with the school buses. If they got to get somewhere and some of them really want to get somewhere, we let them get through.
And you notify emergency services as well, correct?
Yep, EMS knows, and there's access. It's not totally closed.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
Just one more thing before you leave the road program. Can you just mention a little bit about the municipal authority? Because I know that they do some paving and resulting from their works on their mains, and I know you coordinate, you don't control it or really get involved, but I know you're aware of it and about what they do on the roads as well.
Yeah, it's an important thing to mention. I'm glad you brought it up there. You know, this year, just in the springtime, because of new water mains they've been installing throughout the township, and quite a few in the sector we're working in this year. As part of that new construction, they completely restore our roads. Even if the trench just goes down the middle of the road or the side of the road, they subcontract out to mill and repave the whole section of
Curb
road.
to curb.
Curb to curb. You know, there's as many as 9 roads just on this contracts coming out for the spring, and there's more planned for the fall. So it's an important part of keeping our roads nice that the authority's contributing to.
And typically, if a utility came in, they're just required to restore what they disturbed, not curb to curb.
Correct, and sometimes just half the road.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that and, give kudos to the authority for helping us out in that respect.
Yep, but it's huge.
Can we touch on one other thing before we leave road
Sure,
program?
sure.
How we fund it. Just so the folks at home know how we
Sure. You
how
wanna
we
handle
fund
it,
this,
or-
why we can't repave the whole township. We have limited funds.
Yeah, so we get liquid fuels funding from the state from gas tax. And depending on the size of your municipality and the population, you're allotted a certain amount to do all sorts of things with the money to improve the township, from road paving to buying equipment, trucks, snow plowing equipment, materials, anything from stone to asphalt. But all that stuff is what we use liquid fuels funding for our paving program.
And snow removal.
And snow removal. And
Salt.
Salt. Yep.
Because I know in years past, we were only able to pave a small amount of streets because we had a horrible winter with snow removal, and it ate up all the liquid fuels money.
That can happen. Yeah, it's something it's kind of hard, tricky to budget for too.
And-
Sure, yeah.
It's actually, it's a very good point, because this year, one of the things we didn't have to, we're going to do next year, is purchase a dump truck. And we're planning on purchasing probably a dump truck next year, and that will eat into the liquid fuels allocation. So that might be why next year we do less roads. So it's always a moving target.
Right, and the ADA corners are a federal mandate that they do not fund. It's
He's
an
going to get to that.
Oh, okay, it's an unfunded mandate.
That's important.
I always
Yeah.
put that in there for Mr. Quinn, because that was a long time pet peeve of Mr. Quinn.
Yeah, that's a painful one for budgets too.
Just wanted to thank you, Eric, because I did get a few phone calls in the
Oh,
past
great.
couple of years, and you've been like right on it, and people really do appreciate that.
Oh,
I
thank
want
you
to
very
say
much.
thanks.
You get very high marks for your interaction with the public. and-
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
absolutely.
Thank you
So
very
keep
much.
up the good work with that.
Thanks. Is there any questions on South Norristown? That should be paved Tuesday or Wednesday next week. Yeah, that's just the small section they're doing. So these are the numbers we're looking at for this year's program. And as I mentioned, these are liquid fuels funds. The first 2 bullets are liquid fuels funds. The last one is not. That's funded through escrow funds.
And just to drive the point with the ADA compliant ramps, 40 ramps, total of $195,000. I mean, that's probably equates to just shy of 2 miles of paving if you didn't have that
It's a
requirement.
federal mandate, yet the state and us and the municipality has to fund it.
Might be the next slide.
Oh,
All right.
there you go.
Sure. So, like on the last slide, it's a huge expense, $195,000. For a mile of road right now, the cost estimate is right around $110,000 for a typically 26-foot wide road in the township. That's a pretty common width. So $110,000 for a mile of road restoration. Just for ramps, resurfacing, that will always trigger the federal mandate that requires a new ADA compliant ramp at the corner.
And it's a wonderful
intersection.
mandate. I just wish they would fund it.
It's a very strict way to get you to upgrade your ramps,
Uh,
and you don't have a choice. So just one ADA ramp, and right now they're $4,500 to $5,500 per ramp, right in there, right, Karen? It's
Yeah, that's what we're finding.
It's right in
Even
there.
in other municipalities, that's a pretty standard cost.
So this year, just the cost of our road program, and ramps are going to, account for 37% of that cost, which is very high. I mean, I guess looking into the future as we catch up to compliance, and then we get into these neighborhoods, we'll get that 37% back when we go to restore roads, because the ramps will all be good to go.
They'll be done already.
They'll be done.
All right, as we revisit.
Yep.
Okay.
Any questions on ramps? So, last year was Sector 4, this year's Sector 1. Next year, it'd be mostly Sector 5, probably not so much in Sector 1. Sector 5 is kind of like where we are right now, blocking the township. I'll show you a sector map. Our mains are, we're going to have to do something about our mains. We're probably going to have to do patchwork on all our main roads to get through to 2022 when we really can go after them with more money.
You mentioned main roads. I mean, obviously, we've got some state roads and whatnot.
Okay,
Those
yeah.
are the biggies. So what are the mains?
So our mains are, if you want to start on the west end of town, we have Valley Road from Street to Bristol. That's our responsibility. The southern end is Warrington, so that's a big piece and is in need of patchwork. We have Norristown Road, both ends, north and south. We have Delmont, which needs some patching. We have Newtown, and we have Centennial, and we have some pretty big mains going through town. So.
And so the public knows too, Eric, even though you're doing this, you spend the entire spring and summer doing patchwork as well.
That's correct.
People call every day, and I know you go out personally to inspect it and
Yep.
schedule the repairs. So for the folks at home, like we get a lot of complaints about roads. If there's a repair that needs to be done, they need to call us. Because we can't
Absolutely.
send you out to repair a road that we don't know about,
Absolutely.
right? So,
Quick
Yeah, and they
question.
do call,
Yeah.
so it's good.
yeah.
All right, because I had this discussion with a rather passionate resident during the election. What is the best way for a resident to report a pothole? What is the best way? Is it the online option or call it in?
I would always say call it in. If you were to call in, you're either going to get the front desk or transferred down to L&I. We have a system in place that they will record it in our system. It'll get dispatched. So that's always the best way. You can always call Public Works directly. The number's posted, but probably put it through our normal complaint system. I'll tell you the opposite of how not to do it. Take a picture, post up on Facebook, and complain about it. Because sometimes we do see those things, but a lot of times we don't. If you've taken the time to take a picture, by the way, you don't have to take a picture. We believe you when you tell us there's a pothole. But if you take that time, just shoot it over to the township. There's emails, there's forms, there's phone numbers. Any one of those ways work.
And we don't do repairs on private property.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that too.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So here's the sector map. We'll be in Sector 1 this year. Like I said, next year we'll be down here where we're standing right now. In Sector 5, a lot of roads around this building need a lot of work. Are there any questions on this year's road program?
Does anyone have any
What's
questions?
the time frame again for full completion?
Full completion. Okay, so with the sub just starting to mill now, full completion, I would guess, is going to be sometime in mid-July.
Great, that's great. Years past, we were paving in October. So
Yeah, okay,
that's great that we've really gotten this right on the right path. I
okay.
wish we could get some more state funding to do some more miles. But now, I know in years past, you've done supplemental paving because you've gotten to the end in July. Hey, we have a little time, we have a little.
Yes,
let's go do some.
we
and
always look
in
at
the
that.
parks and golf course and
Yep.
things like in our properties.
Yeah, absolutely. WCP is going to need some work this year, too, after we're done the paving
So you
program.
actually have that in mind for supplemental work.
Yep.
That's terrific. That's great. Great.
And one quick note, when you said mid-July, it's of course dependent on weather.
It's always weather dependent, yeah.
Does anyone from the public have anything on the road program for Mr. Hines?
Okay, so we'll move on to the capital improvement plan. This year, the adopted budget went for capital projects went to Police Department, 4 new police vehicles. Township Library has a meeting room and lighting project. Parks and Rec has a WC driveway repair. That's some of what you were talking about too, Mark. It needs lining and trail resurfacing. The trail has a lot of cracks in it. We need to get those fixed.
And just so there's no confusion, that work has nothing to do with the grants that we received. That's going to be done at a later date.
The library room, is that underway now, or?
That has not started yet that I know. No, she hasn't. Tracy hasn't started that yet. All right. So this is where it's going to get tough to read up on that screen. This is the future projects. They're all laid out for you on your Excel sheets.
And for anyone at home, if anyone want to, I know it's hard to read on the screen, if anyone wants a copy of that, please email us. We'd be happy to send you a copy of the capital improvement plan.
Yep, as well as the road program. Any details about the road program this year or in future years, just let us know and we'll get you a copy. These are all the ones that you guys can't read. There you go. All right, that's the last slide on capital improvement.
And do you want to, I know we have in budget time a lot of debate on what projects we're going to do. I mean, you want to give a little sense about how we come up with some priorities and how we think about what to defer, and maybe use an example, the facility we're in right now, how we decide whether or not to spend money on that or make recommendations.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just gets prioritized. I mean, that's how it gets done. And every department has projects that are close to their heart. Mm-hmm. They want to make their department as best they can make it. I want to put the shout out for a new salt dome all the time. But obviously the safety of the buildings is paramount, and it just gets prioritized every year. And there's no shortage of project wish lists here, so.
And we've started a facilities committee at some point. I'm sure you'll come in to talk to the committee about what you have in mind too for
Great.
improvements.
And one of the things we always, have to debate is whether or not it's worth spending money on a particular area. If you use this building as an example, we've had a bunch of discussions on the generator. Right now, the generator only powers half the building and only part of the police department. So we actually have an issue if we have a power outage of whether or not we can hold prisoners in the central booking area. But do we want to spend $200,000 on a generator and put more money into this facility? Those are the kinds of debates that we go through all the time and during the CIP plan development and the budget formation.
Yeah, do we have a, I mean, I could sit here with my calculator and add everything up, but just for, especially for the budget, not the budget, the facilities committee, excluding things like, I saw like there was a roller in here and things that are not transferable but facilities based. Do we have any idea what the total would come to?
Yeah.
If not, it's okay on that.
I mean, it would be pretty simple to do. I mean, the whole, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 4 sections that have that kind of peach color over the top of them.
Right.
If you add those 4 green columns on the right, the 5-year totals, that'll give you your number.
Oh, okay.
Because that section is just facilities.
Okay.
And if I could mention one project, which is going to have some discussions in the near future, it's for the golf course. You'll notice the biggest item on there is a new irrigation system. The current estimate being $650,000, and has a note in there, estimate pending. I got the estimate yesterday, so that is going to be about $1.1 to $1.2 million. So we're going to have some discussions on how we go about doing that, whether it's something that the fund, golf course fund can handle, or whether we have to do some short-term financing for that. But we'll have future discussions on that. But just to be clear on that one, that's not tax dollars. That's all within the golf fund, so that it doesn't impact taxes at all. That fund will support that irrigation system, which we expect would last 30 to 40 years.
The new salt storage facility, is that going to be the same location, or what's the size of it?
We think logistically it makes sense to put in the same location.
Okay.
The capacity will increase exponentially. Right now, we hold 500 to 700 tons of salt. This
Okay.
new facility would store up to 3,500 tons of salt, but it is not obnoxiously large, and it is shaped like a barn, kind of. It's like a faux barn. So it's kind of narrow. It'll fit right in that spot nicely.
Okay, because I know in the past we ended up reaching out to neighboring townships for salt.
That's
so-
where I got the idea for this one, from Solberry Township.
Okay.
I've seen theirs. They have one up there. It's nice.
And that's 350,000?
And just a quirk on that, we were looking at purchasing that through liquid fuels as a possibility. But there are certain things liquid fuels pays for and certain things it does not. I believe the thing that caught us up is we couldn't have electricity in it or something?
No, absolutely no electricity.
Yeah, so
No.
we that was a hard one to swallow, so
Yeah.
that's something that we couldn't do through liquid fuels.
Any grant opportunities for things like that?
Very, very few. Things that have to do with ongoing operations, typically, there's not a lot of grant opportunities. You have opportunities for facilities related to RAC grants, and Judy is probably more of an expert on that than I am, and I've seen township buildings get some funding that way, probably libraries. I'm not sure if they would ever go for the salt storage, but we would look at any opportunity, yeah.
There are, more inexpensive options out there, like cloth-type structures, but we just don't think they'll last. It's not worth it. We'd rather wait until it's time to do it right.
And this has been on the radar for some time. Your predecessor has stood before us many times asking for the
Sure.
same thing. So we know we have to at some point figure something out.
Yeah.
And just out of, to put an exclamation point on what I was talking about, I also included on there, because you have under here, well, that's the library. It was about 2 million, give or take.
For facilities?
That's right. There was some information in here too. I think it was under, Public Works, like the storage facility and things of that nature. I added that in there as well.
Yep. Okay, because that's kind of a facility, kind of a cost. I see what you're saying.
And one note, just to always remember, when you look at the capital improvement plan, it's a plan. This is not what we're going to spend. Every single year, we update the plan, and then we come to budget time, and we figure out, okay, what can we actually afford, within the budgetary guidelines, and things get pushed out. Sometimes they get eliminated, but just because it's on this piece of paper, I don't want anyone to add this all up in 1 year and say, oh, wow, we have to spend $3 million in 1 year. That's not how it works. We would certainly like to spend that much money and do all the things that we think need to be done, but we know that's not a fiscal reality, and we have to go ahead and talk about priorities.
Does anyone else have anything for Mr. Hines? Anyone from the public have anything to add or questions or?
Yeah, Mark.
Just on the capital improvement plan or the road program, sir. There'll be public comment shortly for other items, non-agenda items.
We think you're doing a great job.
Yeah,
Thanks.
keep up the
Thank you.
good work. We're really thrilled.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
And I'd just like to say I appreciate those kind words, and I'm going to pass them along to the crew. They're a terrific bunch of guys. I mean, I'm only as good as the guys standing behind me. They're a really good, hardworking group of guys. They really care about the town. So I just want to thank them publicly.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, Eric.
thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay. Next up on tonight's agenda is the Jacksonville Road Corridor Concept Plan Proposal. Judy Goldstein's here from Boucher and James. For those of you that don't know, Judy is our planner.
I'm a little shorter than Eric. Hello, thank you for spending some time with me tonight. We're going to talk about the Jacksonville Road Corridor, and the things that, too close, the things that we can do as a township to really enhance the corridor, we're looking at a lot of opportunity. So I'm just going to start my little slideshow here. There are no plans done per se right now. I'm just going to show you some vignettes or some things of what could be. Talk about a couple of the issues, some of the opportunities, and then Greg and I will talk to you about possibly forming a committee and getting some consensus from the community on how you want to move forward with Jacksonville Road. So first, I always like to start with the opportunities. You have a lot of opportunity along Jacksonville Road. It's a major corridor. There are existing and a lot of future potential business opportunities along Jacksonville Road. You could create a town center. There's potential for gathering spaces. Easy access to the Warminster train station. It is right there. Existing and continuous sidewalk on the southeast side of the road. There are some planted strips between curb and there's sidewalk and road in some areas. There is available retail and office space, and there is room for growth, which I see as good. There's multifamily housing, and I look at that as a very much positive because you need feet on the street, if you will. You need people in the area to patronize the businesses, so you need more feet on the street all the time. There are some updated intersections existing already. And then we look at some of the constraints. Limited sidewalks along the northwestern side of the street, sort of the opposite of the good side of the street right there. Sidewalks are on the street in many areas with no buffers, so when you walk, although in theory you're safe, you don't feel safe. You tuck your elbows in, cars are zooming by. There are a lot of dead-end sidewalks and some damaged sidewalks, and it's not really pedestrian-friendly. You can walk it, but you don't feel comfortable yet. And I say yet, because you will. So let's look at a couple issues. We're just going to go through some vignettes of issue by issue, what they are, and some images of what they could be. First one, we have a lot of underutilized center turning lanes. Traffic engineers will call it the suicide lane, just this sort of opposing continuous left turn. And we have some flush mediums. So we have a lot of that strip in the middle of the road that's not used to its best advantage yet. And you can see some of that in the images. So then we go to a potential solution, and these are just images. They're not Jacksonville Road, but you could have a roadway diet. I look at, taking out that center lane where it's not needed. Have some dedicated left turn areas. When you can, do some planted medians when you don't need it for a left turn lane. You'll see later it could even be pedestrian refuge on crosswalks. So look at what we have. Less paving is also good for our BMPs and our MS4 program. I'm sure we could do some things to help that while we're helping the roadway. Then we look at the next issue. We have a lot of unmarked or worn out intersections. They look tired, they're not really well defined, and they're not pedestrian friendly. It's hard to get people on the street if it's not pedestrian friendly. So some potential solutions would be decorative crosswalks, and I'm not saying you have to go in and put pavers in. There are different ways to do decorative crosswalks. There are some very cost-effective ways to do them, and I think that we could come up with sort of a visual language along Jacksonville Road that can help it both with identity and with delineation, so people will feel more safe while navigating the corridor. Another issue, sidewalk uncomfortably close to the road. That's when I say you tuck your elbows in. These are some images. And again, the cars do go whizzing by, as do the trucks. So potential solutions, you can have some bump outs where you can get some trees and some planted areas in some areas. Other places, you can have some trails that are set back a little bit farther from the road, trails or sidewalks. There are ways to do it. And again, we're not starting from scratch. We have some good bones. We can enhance them. Another issue, we have some dead end or missing sidewalks. Or as I say, like little missing chiclets. They're just not quite there. There are some easy solutions to that. Continue sidewalks, create trails. Some cases maybe relocate some sidewalk or some trails, but there are fixes. And you can see some images in here. Each of these are in different areas, but there are things that could happen here. Another issue, we have some limited street crossing options. We have really long blocks and there's not much way to navigate across Jacksonville Road without just jaywalking and running across. So some solutions could be mid-block crossing islands. Remember, I was talking about the roadway diet and utilizing that center lane. You could have some mid-block crossings utilizing the center lane for pedestrian refuge. And then another issue is we have underutilized space in the corridor. That's the vacant or underutilized land. And solutions to that, gathering spaces, sidewalk seating, in addition to businesses. But the businesses that come in, you know, we had someone come into a staff meeting. We won't say the name, but it was a smoothie kind of health foodie place. And we talked about, well, if you're going to have a patio and seating, have it out toward the road. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the road, but have it out where people can see it. You know, a couple umbrellas, some tables, it's more activity on the corridor. And then here's one that we all know about. Issue is parking at the train station. The good news is there's a lot of parking. The bad news is there are even more cars.
Yeah, even with the addition of the new parking lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is people are using public transportation. I think it'd be great if we can encourage even more use of public transportation, and we can do that by having more parking. And again, more people coming to the station, more people are along the corridor, and they can use the goods and services provided along the corridor. So we just put a couple images up. Emily helped me with this in the office. You know, Lansdale just did a new parking garage. There are opportunities. It's not something you tackle on your own. It's also not something SEPTA should do on their own, because the community needs to be involved to make sure that your footprint and what you want to see on it is part of it. I think it needs to be an open dialogue and probably a continuous dialogue for many years.
Yeah. Well, I know the one developer along there that's really made substantial investments. They put the extra exit out of the train station at their expense, which was really beautifully done, and it's really utilized. It's working out really well. And part of the reason that we're just taking a look at this at 100,000 feet right now is because there's tremendous redevelopment going on in that corridor, and we need to keep up on our end with the beautification and controls as it goes.
And part of it really is, you know, you talk about the opportunity for some redevelopment, and I say adaptive reuse. If you have your plan in place, then it's easy to say to the developer when they come in and they're asking for their normal waivers of curbs and sidewalks and different things, well, we have this plan. How can you help us realize this while we help you realize your dream?
Exactly. And Jacksonville Road being a state highway, we would need to work closely with PennDOT. I mean, that was my next, where I was leading to with you. Are there grant, I'm sure there's got to be grant opportunities.
That's my last slide.
Okay, great. I don't want to jump ahead of you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before you
Sure.
move on?
There is lots of
So of course, what we're talking about mainly here on Jacksonville is between County Line and Street, right?
Yes,
Not-
that's-
Not north of
I should have
Street Road.
defined that first. Thank you, Mr. Monroe. That is the area.
Well, the only reason why I was looking at, because I know it's more 4-lane highway north of Street Road and 2-lane mostly, right? South of that?
Correct.
Correct.
So my main question is, especially if what you're doing is we're, decades down the road, considering a town center, how crucial is on-street parking for something like that? Anytime I've ever been to a town center of any kind, in my experience, is always on-street parking. How crucial is that?
It depends on how the town center is implemented. If there is ample parking and the parking is visible and easily utilized, it's not imperative that it be on-street. But on-street parking also gives opportunity to do a few of the things that we're talking about, the bump outs. So you can utilize some of the paving you have already for parking and then have bump outs for trees and islands to articulate where the parking is to get it safely separated from the travel lane and let people feel safe getting in and out. In areas where it's not safe or desired to have on-street parking, then you do need to have ample public parking available.
Okay.
In some areas where it's not on-street parking, you create sort of a marginal access road where you bring the buildings back along a frontage road, and there's parking on that.
Okay.
So there are a lot of creative ways to deal with it.
And just to correct myself, I actually, now that I think about it, I think Hershey, at least
Oh.
in some of my experience, I don't know how much on-street parking they have. I think it's mostly parking lot and things of that nature, and they have a decent town center.
They have a mix, I believe.
There's a mix,
Yeah.
and I think in areas where it's a little too congested, they utilize the parking garage, which is a fairly new addition to the town. And there's just a couple more slides to go through. We talked about, the great things that are happening at the train station and adjacent to the train station. But still, when you're in the train station parking lot, there's a Dunkin' Donuts right out there, so it's easy to walk up. Well, it's easy in your mind to walk because you just drove by it, but you really can't get from there to here or from here to there. So more signage, more pedestrian articulation. Let's go to the next one. Just, on trails, sometimes you see, like, it's a 4-minute walk to a grocery store. It could be, Dunkin' that way, quarter mile, 200 yards, something. Just let people know how to get where they need to go for their goods and services and to complement the train station. And then we had just a couple local examples. Recently, Lower Gwinnett Township implemented a streetscape plan along Bethlehem Pike, and they did some simple things. It wasn't major, it's some fencing, some street trees, just a common fence along the corridor, that it was their identity. And the next slide shows a little more. That's their vision of some bringing mixed use up to the street. And they're not really doing that individually as a township. It's the property owners, and as people come in for adaptive reuse and land development, they're putting in some of the improvements along the corridor. Another one, Hector Street in Conshohocken, you can see some renderings of what they're looking at. And that's really dealing with some bump outs, roadway diet, and some on-street parking. I know Karen's very familiar with that one. And then last, just Washington's Crossing. These are all pretty recent. And these are some pretty upscale crossings. They were fairly expensive. But it's just that you can do that. You can have continuous pedestrian crosswalks. And here's I always like to leave you with something good. There's a lot of funding sources. And this is just a smattering of potential funding sources. And when you get to the point that we actually have a plan, and we're working with a committee appointed by the board and coming up with some suggestions, I think it'll be a team approach. That'll be us as planner, your traffic engineer, and your engineer working together from each of our disciplines to get your best solution and to work with our various skills on the funding for you also.
Yeah, well, it sounds like something that the Comprehensive Plan Subcommittee, I don't know, might want to,
Well,
I don't want to mix apples and oranges, but.
Well, I believe they're pretty much finishing up their work right now. I think kind of the suggestion I have for this is if the board likes the concept, and we really want to bring it before you and make sure you're on board with the concept and moving forward with exploring this, is as a next step, get together what I would call a coalition. Work with the local property owners, the business owners, SEPTA, PennDOT, all the stakeholders, and start the conversation about what the future of Jacksonville can be. Create that vision, and then we move into implementation. And as Judy said, there's plenty of grants out there, but it all starts with that vision. And we have got a lot of great pictures and a lot of great examples of what's happened out there, but I think what we need first is our vision of what's going to happen on Jacksonville, and we can do that through further discussions.
And I also love the idea of a coalition. I like the word coalition. It's people together working to create the cause, like define the cause and then solve the issues, because it needs to be not just buy-in from the community, and I think it needs to be from the community driven.
As this area is under redevelopment, as we all know, we'd just like to see it done uniform and really tasteful.
In terms of community involvement, what role could the Warminster Heights Association play in this? Because they're the ones that live right on Jacksonville Road.
They could certainly have a seat at the table and have a representative on the coalition. I know Greg has been talking about, we've had some chats about what a makeup of a coalition could be, and it needs to be representative of the people and businesses along the corridor and of the township. So I think Warminster Heights should have a seat at the table on that.
That's a great idea. I mean, I really like what you're doing. I like what I'm seeing here. There's a lot of potential here. But I got to point out that, Mr. McKee, you were the one who's been driving this since you were on the board, and I appreciate your leadership on this.
Well, just know it's going to take a long time, and we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
When you see all this redevelopment, you want it done
Exactly.
the right way.
But it's got to start somewhere. You've been driving this for a while, and we appreciate it.
And I think, go ahead, Kathy, you
That's okay.
first, please.
Okay. My question is, you're going to form a coalition and of all the major players, is this going to be like meetings that you'll have together to discuss once we have a plan in place?
Yeah, there would be informal meetings to come up with a vision, and once we have some ideas, we would bring it before the board. At that point, one of the recommendations we might make is say we want to go ahead and make this a little more formal, and at that point, form a committee, of appointed members. But I think just getting together with those stakeholders and getting that vision, and putting some concepts before the board and the public is the appropriate next step.
I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the vision, some of the visions you have are really great, Judy. And I know some things are more costly to do it one way and less costly to do another way. But definitely the turning lanes are a big issue, and the walking too, because people cannot walk those sidewalks.
Yeah.
And I take the train all the time to the airport. So it's really convenient, and I tell people all the time, you just, you have somebody just drive you to the station or what have you, and it's very inexpensive, and seniors, it's only $1 each way.
Well, I see a lot of people walking from the TOD developments. There is a lot of foot traffic there now. Because the TOD 2, my understanding is they're 85% capacity now, and TOD 1 is full. There's a lot of foot traffic there in the morning, the afternoon, the people who live there walk to the train station.
Yeah, I was on the train from Warminster as opposed to my hometown of Doylestown several times during the snow. It just worked out that the times were better to come here. And I was really...
It's always better to come here, Judy.
Well, I was able to get parking too. I have to say that, a little plug that there was parking available in those days at the 6 a.m. train. But I did see a lot of people walking from the TOD, and I was really encouraged by that because I wasn't sure how many people were taking advantage of that. It's always our intent that a transit-oriented development would have people utilizing public transportation. But as a planner, it was heartwarming to actually see it
Yeah,
in action.
it's actually working.
And to circle back on comp plan, which you'll get to see in its full glory in about 2 months, right? You'll find that a lot of what the comp plan is going to consist of is consistent with the vision that's being shown here. It focuses a lot on walkability and sort of bringing consistency to the way that we get around this town and improving access for everyone. So it's addressed not directly. I don't think we talk directly about Jacksonville Road in such direct terms,
Right.
but the overall vision within the plan will mirror what you're seeing here.
Right, one of the suggestions in the comprehensive plan for the implementation was to perform a study of Jacksonville Road, the corridor. So this is sort of realizing some of the comp plan already.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks, Judy.
thank you.
So I
Thank
think
you.
you might as well stay there, Judy,
Yeah, I
because
was gonna walk
you're on
away
the
and realize I'm
agenda.
on
You're on the
next.
agenda next for the comprehensive plan. So if there's no more on this, I'd like to move on to the next agenda.
As long as, I assume there's consensus moving forward with a coalition and progressing down the path we are on right now.
Sure.
Yeah, have fun.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Judy, next up is the comprehensive plan. So if you want to go right into that,
Thank you.
something that you and that committee's been working on for some time now, so I'm anxious to hear about it.
Yes, we're at the point now where I'm representing the committee, are before you tonight asking for the authorization for the township to advertise the adoption of the comprehensive plan. And let me just tell you where we are. The comprehensive plan subcommittee was formed earlier in 2017. We had our first, or actually my first meeting with them was in January when I interviewed with them. In February, we had a bus tour of the township, which was very productive. Then we had 8 subcommittee meetings. There were 2 visioning meetings, 1 town hall meeting, and a community survey. And out of that, there's a document that looks much like this. It's titled Launching Toward the Future. It's a play on the past and the significance of Warminster Township's impact on the flight and space program in the United States and looking toward the future. So we're acknowledging the past, yet looking toward the future. So the title is Launching Toward the Future. And the comprehensive plan is now in a state where the subcommittee has recommended its adoption. They've sent it on to the board to advertise adoption. If you were to authorize that tonight, it will be sent to your planning commission, the Bucks County Planning Commission, the adjacent municipalities, and the school district, all for comment. There would be a 45-day review period once each of those agencies receives the comprehensive plan. And after 45 days, the township would hold a hearing to adopt the plan. I would be present at the planning commission meeting to present the plan. I have a PowerPoint prepared to go through the plan, what it means, the major items, the major goals and objectives. I would bring that same presentation to the Board of Supervisors, and then at that time, you would be able to adopt the plan.
And this plan is a roadmap for the future development and redevelopment of this township. What we'd like to see happen is redevelopment. It's mainly redevelopment, I think, at this point in Warminster. I think that's
It's redevelopment, as I like to say, adaptive reuse.
right. And what we'd like to see happen.
Yeah,
If
and
that happens.
it covers a lot of goals. It covers land use and housing and transportation and infrastructure and community facilities. It covers a lot. And we can go through all the details when it's appropriate or whenever you want, but it's very comprehensive, and there's a significant portion of it, what I call the meat and potatoes, is the action plan. It's really a list. Each goal, there are several objectives. Each objective, there are several implementation strategies or action items, and they define what entity would be responsible and what the time frame would be. It's a map and a tool. It's not a mandate. So each year at budget time, you pull it out, and you as the board, the current sitting board at that time, decide what you want to do. It's a guide, though.
Right, or if a development or redevelopment comes in, we can go to the comp plan and say, we'd like to see this,
Exactly.
which I feel that we've been lacking, and that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, a lot has happened since your last comprehensive plan.
Right.
A lot. There's been significant changes to the township, and the old plan, it's not that it wasn't useful anymore, it just became outdated because the township had changed so much, and it was never anticipated.
Right.
I like the fact that you're implementing a lot of those things with the newer developments that are going up now. And you had said, you know, some of the signage on some of the buildings looks really bad, but, you know, we talk to the owners, or somebody new takes over, then we can do something about it. There are a lot of affordable things in there that aren't going to cost the township a lot of money, which I like. I really was an honor to serve on that board, and I'm very, very happy with the finished product. And it was nice to have a lot of residents give their opinions at our vision meeting. So thank you, Judy, for doing a great job.
Thank you. It was a great subcommittee
You
to
and
work
your
with.
team did a
Yeah,
great
my team, I'm nowhere without my team, and they all participated in this.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the product. One other thing I want to touch on before we take any action. We're gonna take action tonight to advertise, but there's no time constraint on when we need to adopt.
Correct.
So,
You'll advertise, and the advertisement will say when you'll have your hearing. You do not need to adopt at the hearing, but
Right.
you do need to have the public hearing, and you cannot have it until you've received, or until you've given the 45-day comment period to the reviewing agencies.
right, that's where I'm going, okay. Let me ask you another question. Is that available to the public yet, or does it have to go through the reviewing agencies first?
That's up to the township.
It's completely up to the board whether you'd want to put it out for comment now or waiting for the statutory process to go through it and then hear all the feedback all at once, however you plan on doing it, or hear the feedback at the public hearing.
What have other townships done in terms of allowing the public, or giving public the access immediately upon its advertisement?
I'd say it's about 50/50.
Okay, yeah. That's what I figured.
Some choose to wait until the hearing to put it on the website, because then you've received the comments from all the other agencies, because it's likely that there might be something from one of the reviewing agencies, whether it's the county or an adjacent municipality or the school district or your planning commission, that might come up with something that you hadn't thought of or hadn't been anticipated that would make sense to implement. It's up to you, but at that point, everything will be made public. There will be a public hearing, and all of those comments are part of the public record.
And I think I'd lean towards doing it that way, to hear comments from our planning commission and county planning commission before we just put it out there.
Right, because what if we have to change something or add something?
It could turn into a fiasco.
It may not be, because it may be a draft.
Yeah, it sounds like the board has a consensus that that's
Okay.
what we're going to do. So is there any further comments from the board, or the public for that matter, on this? So I'd like to, seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to do the comprehensive plan, authorization for advertisement.
Motion.
Ms. Frescatore, second.
Second.
Mr. Crowley, any further discussion from the board?
Just clearly want to thank Kathy and Jason for everything they put into this. Great job, guys.
Yeah, these two have put a tremendous amount of time, my fellow board members, a tremendous amount of time. A lot of evenings out of the house working on this.
And a lot of
Thank you.
homework between meetings. They were, the whole
Sure, a lot
committee,
of
especially these
correspondence
two,
as
were
well,
rock stars.
sure.
Judy's notorious for homework.
The one thing everybody should check out once we get it out there is, we had the visioning meeting in, when was that, September?
Yeah, I was
October?
down to Shore, you were texting me.
Right.
All that information, every response we got from that visioning meetings is in the report.
Yes.
And it's fascinating information for everybody to take a look at, so I encourage you. And it just shows, we had a terrific turnout, that when we invite the people out, they respond, and we really appreciated everybody who put into this. So while Kathy and I will gladly accept all the credit for this wonderful plan, it really was work of a huge team, including the residents, so thank you.
And speaking of Kathy, I have one editorial comment, if I may. I see the listing of the Comprehensive Plan Subcommittee, and Kathy's third. She's elected officials. Any way we can change that to she's second?
That would happen.
Listen,
We should. We were asked to do it so that it was the chairperson of the committee, then everyone else is alphabetical order, but I see no reason why that
We
can't be
change-
changed.
okay.
We can certainly change anything that the board wants us
I
to
mean,
change.
this is a document that's going to live
That's-
forever in Warminster. I think that she should be listed second.
Well, thank you, Dan, that's very nice of you.
Absolutely.
We don't need to
Sounds
take
like-
action on that, right? No. There's a motion on the floor.
I'll make sure that happens.
Is there any other comment from the board on the motion? Is there any from the public? I see none. I'm going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion carries. Judy, thank you very much. Thank you. It was very informative.
And just to be clear, the motion just passed was to authorize it for an adoption hearing on July 19th, 2018.
Correct.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Judy.
Judy.
Okay, next up on tonight's agenda, we only have one item under Land Use Matters, Public Hearings and Ordinances, and it's an authorization to advertise the defined contribution ordinance amendment. Mr. Bartle, you want to touch on that?
Yes, thank you. The board has a copy of the proposed ordinance in draft form. This is an ordinance that amends and restates in its entirety Ordinance 709, the defined contribution pension plan for full-time, non-uniformed employees. It does three things, in addition to having a general cleanup of the ordinance itself. Number one, it allows employees to self-direct the investment in their account. Number two, it clarifies the classification of employees participating in the plan. And three, it updates the vesting schedule for the township manager and for the members who are at-will employees of the township to reflect a percentage based on based vesting schedule. Where we are at this point is this. This ordinance has been prepared and reviewed by my office. It has also been sent to our counsel, our labor lawyer, Scott Blissman, who has reviewed the matter, and it has now been sent to the union because these are bargained issues for their review as well. So when those comments come back, and I don't anticipate there being anything substantial coming back, but nonetheless, that's all part of the process. This then will be advertised if you so direct, and then it'll be for your consideration at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Is there a motion to authorize advertisement for the defined contribution ordinance amendment?
Motion.
Mr. Monroe, is there a second? Mr. McPhillips, any comment from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up on tonight's agenda is public comment. Township residents have the opportunity at this time to comment on any non-agenda items, subject to the 5-minute guideline as recognized by the chair. Is there any public comment tonight? I see Warminster's favorite tax collectors in the house. Mrs. Loftus, good to see you.
Somebody's a lot bigger than me. Thank you very much. I just wanted to report on the tax office. We had a wonderful discount period. We had 9,417 people pay. In my 19 years as tax collector, I have never reached 92% paid in the discount. I only have a little over 800 people left to pay.
Awesome.
So it was a phenomenal time. So bank the money, don't spend it all right away. I also wanted to remind the people that starting tomorrow and every Friday thereafter, I will be writing the checks for the $55 if you pay your trash through your mortgage company and you are a senior citizen, age 62 or older, and live in the house. So I have about 45 checks ready for pickup tomorrow morning, so I will be doing it every Friday.
Great, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Loftus. We do appreciate what you do for us, believe me.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other public comment? Please, come up. Good.
My name is Nick Honorato. I live on Ivy Land Road. You might remember me from our meeting in, January?
January.
I'm sorry, I'm a little winded, a little sweaty. I was going door to door delivering these flyers announcing the Planning Commission meeting. That's on Tuesday. It was originally supposed to be Tuesday a few weeks ago on May 8th, and then it was changed to the 7th, and then 3 hours before it was canceled. So my cardiologist appreciates me running door to door every time this happens.
And I might add, it was canceled at the request of the applicant. I mean, I
heard.
saw some chatter out there that the township. that
Can
we
you
didn't
hear
have
me?
to-
'Cause I-
Yes.
Okay.
The applicant requested the continuance. The
I
township
heard
did
that.
not.
Not sure why, but
Right.
one of my questions is, I had to run up to the building and intercept all the people who I had stirred up to come, and they wanted to comment. And why can't we have the meeting anyway? They had things to say. Whether the builder was there or not, the people had things that they wanted to voice.
I mean, I'm going to give that to the professionals. That's a good question. Fair
I'll
question.
handle it.
Okay.
Okay. Is this a land development application that is this before? Okay. Well, generally, the rule is that when someone files a land development application, there are certain time parameters for the conducting of the business under that. The case law makes it very clear that the municipality has an obligation to cooperate with the applicant in allowing the applicant the necessary time to make modifications to its plan so as to bring it into compliance. When they ask for a continuance with respect to the Planning Commission meeting, and they're not ready to go at that point in time, it's generally given as part of that obligation to cooperate and allow them to do that. That's not us doing it. We're not asking for the continuance and the extra time. That's the applicant, and we're giving them the opportunity that they are entitled to under the law to bring that plan into compliance with, or as close to compliance as they can. So apparently, what they would normally say, and I wasn't involved in this particular one, what they would normally say is, we're not ready to go yet because we can't answer some of the issues that have been either brought up by your professionals or brought up maybe by members of your group that they're fashioning an answer to at this point in time, and then coming back when they're ready to make the presentation. From a township standpoint, I know it's an inconvenience to people that have planned to be there on a given night. From a standpoint of the township, from a legal standpoint, it does not hurt us because of the fact that they can't build until they get their ultimate approvals, if it is to be approved at all. So there is no way that they can pull permits until they go through the entire process. So there's nothing happening other than behind the scenes on their side to get ready for those meetings. There is nothing that is prejudicing us or our position at all, so long as we have the appropriate extensions, and we require that as part of their application process. So that's why these things are done in the fashion that they are.
I believe
We
that
apologize for the late
I
notice.
believe that, the meeting was postponed because that was the only thing on the agenda, correct? For that particular meeting.
It was the only thing on the agenda. My understanding, it was postponed at 3 in the afternoon on Facebook. I don't participate in Facebook. I never will. So I found out as I was leaving my driveway, and I went up there to intercept people, got to talk to some people. And by the way, does that count against my 5 minutes?
No, go, that's fine. But as you can see, we have a line of people, so take your time.
So,
It's fine.
my experience with township politics in the 40 years I've lived here is limited to Warminster baseball and coaching and umpiring and Warminster soccer. My wife has had more experience as being library board president for 25 years. And as a matter of fact, your predecessor, proclaimed Linda Honorato Day once, and I wish I could use it now for favor. But limited experience, but I understand, like, they don't have sunshine laws for the planning board, I mean, you wouldn't be allowed to cancel a meeting within 3 hours of the meeting time, would you?
Yes.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the sunshine law, sir.
Oh, okay.
The sunshine law requires that we do our business in public unless allowed in executive session.
Okay.
But the idea as to when those meetings take place, if there's a reason to continue a meeting, both the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission have that same latitude.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, intercepting the 20 or so people that were there, you want some feedback? They're angry. They're very angry. They had things to say, they were ready, and they feel like, in their gut, they feel like this is being done to dissuade them for having an interest in what's going on, and they want me to tell you, they're not going to lose interest. And they're upset about it, you know, and they have opinions, and
And they're entitled to.
And I apologize, you know, for any problems this caused or any disconcern, you know, any anger that this may have stirred up. That was never the intention.
no, you have no reason to apologize. You didn't
No,
cancel it.
because I want to make sure that every citizen, as well as every person that comes before anybody, you know, has a right to be heard. And in this case, you know, the decision was made to cancel the chairman. I'm you know, speaking out of turn here, I think, but I think everyone would agree that the chairman of the Planning Commission is a very fair individual, and I'm sure he would never want to allow a situation where, you know, one side of the argument's coming and the other is not. Wouldn't be fair if that ever happened to, you know, just listen-only developer and shut out citizens.
Yeah.
The flip side is true as well. So you want to hear both sides of the argument, and they look forward, I'm sure, to hearing both sides of the argument. The other issue is when the only thing on the agenda is basically removed, you have a choice to make. Do you want to have all the professionals, whoever the planner, the solicitor, whoever else may be out there that we're paying for,
Right.
come to a meeting in which there is nothing to, you know, to discuss on the
Right.
agenda and spend that money, and that's when they make a decision. Let's just cancel, you know, the whole meeting. So I think those are some of the factors that come in, but our obligation and our commitment is always to make sure people know when these meetings occur, have every available information as quickly as possible. When something happens 3 hours before a meeting, Facebook and social media is the quickest way to get it out. We post things up wherever we can, but it's just tough. And I do apologize if anyone was inconvenienced.
I'm getting some exercise. My shoes don't look so good, you know, but I understand what you're saying. A couple of good things happened at that meeting. The Planning Commission meeting was right here on 27th of March, I believe. And, you know, the builder and the attorney and the traffic engineer gave their, you know, 75-minute pitch, and then there was quite a few people who talked after that. Some of them were nice and some of them were not so nice. And some of them, you know, it got heated and it continued out in the hallway because some of the things that we were told insulted our intelligence, you know, and we, you know, some of the people told the traffic engineer that. One of the things he said, if you don't know, is that there's the cars backed up on Ivy Land Road after 42 houses are developed would increase by 1/2 car length. And at that point, most people in this audience had a lot of things to say out loud right then and there.
By the way, you're talking about the developer's traffic engineer, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that brings a point. Why can't we have an independent traffic engineer, our own traffic engineer, you know, or PennDOT's traffic engineer, do a study instead of a bought and paid for traffic engineer who's going to tell you what they want to tell you?
Yeah, well, we do have a traffic engineer, and I don't want to get too far into this
Yeah,
because
it's
it is
not your-
well, it's before the Planning
Exactly.
Commission, and
Exactly.
I believe the meeting is this Tuesday. I encourage everyone to attend. Our traffic engineer will be there, and rather than sit here and answer for
Right.
him, I would prefer that residents go to the
glad
meeting
to hear
and
that.
ask whatever questions you want, and hear about the process and hear about what our traffic engineer has to say. So.
I've been trying to do what I can do. I mean, I met Joe of Elton, and I read his letter. I think it makes a lot of good points. I'm sure you've read his letter.
Yes.
There was, you know, I've seen the Bucks County Planning Commission letter. I've met with Bernie O'Neill for 45 minutes. He's 1,000% behind us, and we are not trying to stop development of that farm. We just want no access on Ivy Land Road, which is a disaster now. And one of the things pointed out by the traffic engineer was Ivy Land Road is rated F. that whole road. And that's as bad as a rating you can get, and that's before you develop 42 houses. That's before the 35 houses are sold at Longshore. That's before the Weiss Market opens up. What's it go after F? So these decisions are going to have long-lasting impact long after the builder is gone. Is there something?
The lights are just flickering.
Flickering.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh.
I've never seen that before.
I thought I was doing something.
That's the 5-minute warning, right?
The hook's coming out. And one other thing I delivered to the Planning Commission, I will deliver to you guys when the meeting comes up, is I spent 3 hours walking up and down Ivy Land Road with my daughter, and one other person went on a couple other roads, and we collected 200 signatures like that who are dead against this Ivy Land Road access. And they want you to know, they think, they don't understand why it's even being considered. I said, they have a right to present what they have to present, it'll have to be voted on. But they said, it's a non-starter. Why would anyone even consider that? So I will present that. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned, we've talked about traffic, we've talked about speeds, we've talked all about that. We've talked about blind line of Sight Hill, and we've talked about Mearns and Stubb Roads and Ivy Land Road. No one has mentioned water yet. And I would like, and as I was sitting at my computer, I would like to show you this. These are from a couple years ago. My backyard and our neighbor's backyard, we're on Ivy Land Road. There's a natural swale that starts up Longstreth. Oh, it starts at Perkins, goes down behind our houses, and then it goes underneath Ivy Land Road.
Yeah,
You know all about it?
I think that's a great issue to bring up at the Planning Commission. Just understand it's not
Yeah.
before us right now.
I just want you to see.
So,
This is after a rain. This happened 2 weeks ago as well.
Mm-hmm.
This happened yesterday, and the water sits there for days.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about mosquitoes and disease. Like, come on, you're not even supposed to
I'll
have-
just say in general, storms.
This has nothing to do with the Downshire Farm, correct?
It does.
It does?
Because Downshire has 20 acres of farm that are absorbing water now, and pretty soon
Well,
it's going to be
Will that be
42
addressed
roots.
with land development? I mean, there's stormwater ordinance in
Yes.
place.
In general, you have to comply with stormwater ordinances
Right.
that don't make any, at the very least, don't make anything worse, but we try to make things better.
Right.
So that's all going through the Planning Commission right now,
Well,
and
it's to my knowledge, sir, the applicant hasn't even contacted the water people yet about that storm management. So, we're
We
getting
did-
pretty far ahead.
I don't want to get into a long
Yeah, I
land
think that's
development
gonna be
discussion
from
here,
planning
but Karen,
I
if you have
can
something to
just tell
say.
you, as part, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We did do a review of the stormwater management report and design they submitted with land development, and again, we can discuss it at the
I'll
planning
give them
commission
to you.
meeting, but they did address it with their land development submission.
Thank you.
They're required to do that, and it's always reviewed by the municipal engineer. And there are standards that they have to comply with respect to the rate and the amount of water. So
Yeah.
you'll hear about
And
that.
and it does have something to do with this development, because there's 20 less acres that are going to be, not going to be absorbing water, but collecting water on rooftops, driveways, and streets, and sending it down to that 5 unbuildable acres, where there's already a mess. Okay.
Okay, no, it's
I
fine.
appreciate you.
All right, no, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Honorable.
See you now.
Have a good night.
Is there any,
To put anything on the back of those?
do you want those back, or can I hang on to them?
I can give them to you, but I would like to put something on the back so you know what they are.
you can do whatever, yeah, you can do whatever you
Why
want
don't you
to.
do that and give them to Catherine when you're done? So we have to move on with our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Schuster?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rather light consent agenda this evening. Item A is approval of the minutes from your April 19th, 2018 meeting. Item B is approval of the Memorial Day Parade proclamation. Item C is approval of the Vietnam Veterans Day proclamation to be read June 16th at the Wounded Warriors 5K at Warminster Community Park. Item D is approval of a document disposal resolution 2018-20, which is mostly financial documents. The entire list is included in your packet. And item E is Hart School redevelopment release number 14 from escrow in the amount of $62,511 as recommended by the engineer.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Mr. McPhillips, a second?
Second.
Mr. Crowley? Any discussion on consent agenda?
Yeah, how much more, I know it says release number 14 for the Hart School. How much more is there?
I'll be getting close to the end, I imagine.
There is $205,227.50 left. The original started at almost 1.5 million. So they're very near completion of the project.
Okay.
Any comment from the public on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up is finance report. Item A, Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask for a approval of the bills list dated May 17th, 2018, in the amount of $1,188,089.05, and a supplemental bill list dated April 30th, 2018, in the amount of $730.82.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Ms. Frescatore, second. Mr. McPhillips, any discussion from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Item B, April financial statement. Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I assume that last motion was also covering the transfers for April.
Correct.
Thank you. The April financial statement's been included in your packet. Real estate taxes are doing well, as you've heard from the tax collector. As of the end of April, it was 91.4% of budget. The transfer tax is slightly under budget. Building permits continue to be stronger than budgeted, so we have some good signs there. In total, we've collected about $450,000 less than last year at this point. I'm not overly concerned about that right now. We have some other things that we know are going to be coming in. Also, there is a lag in certain amounts of our revenue. Right now, I'm seeing a lag in the earned income tax. It's around 25%. It should be around 33%, and there's usually a timing issue with that. So I'm not overly concerned, but I want to make sure the board's aware that I'm watching that. On the on the expenditure side, I'm not seeing any major deviations. Everything is pretty much going according to budget, plus or minus some minor deviations. And on the golf course, we're seeing some better numbers now that play has picked up, although this weather of late is not going to help us out. And one thing to note with the golf course financial report, because of the way that we have outsourced this to Spirit and the reconciliation that takes place over a few week period, we've decided it's just a better thing to do to have that report lag a month behind, so that every single month you'll see. So in May, we're getting the April report for everything, but going forward, you're going to get 2 months back for the golf. It's going to be a little bit more of a lag.
So that report will be all expenditures?
All expenditures, all revenue. It's just going to be a little bit more of a lag because we want to give you a report that is completely reconciled.
Okay, and that will be a detailed report?
Yes. Yep. It could be a detailed line item report, and we have, if you want to go further, we do get all transactional information from Spirit Golf. So every single transaction that occurs, every dime that's spent, every dime that's received, we have records for all of that.
Excellent. And well, I'll just touch on Spirit. I mean, I've been over there. They're really doing a tremendous job.
Yeah, absolutely. I encourage everyone to go over there for lunch. Their lunches are fantastic over at the golf course. Every single day, they're making a new improvement over at the clubhouse. The course is in a phenomenal condition. It's just, it really is a great course.
I have a question on financial statement. I know we're still a little bit early. We're probably a few months from getting into budget season again. I know we budgeted for a pretty hefty deficit. Are we still trending that way? I mean, I know it's a little early to start asking that, but...
So I believe when you look at the finances where we are right now, we're coming up, I think, where we're going to be, or budgeted to be in terms of expenditures. So every year we try to save some money. So on the expenditure side, we might be a little bit under budget. Revenue, I think at this point, we're looking to be on track. I don't see anything that's going to make us go incredibly over budget right now in revenue or incredibly under budget. So if everything goes according to plan, or budget, I should say, that's a $1.6 million deficit. The major the X factor out there right now for me is building permits. Building permits were up a couple $100,000 than where we expect to be, and we're still early in the season. So that could be a salvation for us, and that could definitely help us out. But I think the answer to that question is not going to be on the expenditure side. It's going to be on the revenue side and how those building permits, those transfer taxes come in. Real estate tax, we know what that's going to be.
Right.
Earned income tax, based on the economy and the way the job market is going, I'm expecting hopefully an uptick there, but I don't expect it to be, $500,000 of an uptick. So I think we're going to see positive signs, but I don't see anything right now which is going to prevent us from having a deficit. I think it's just going to be what magnitude that deficit is going to be.
Right, so by the time we start August, when we start preparing for next year's budget, we'll have a little bit clearer picture.
Every month we get more of a clearer picture,
Because it's
but
really going to impact what we're doing next year.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Anything else on the statement? Okay. We have one action item, is the budget amendment number 1, resolution 2018-21. I'll give that to Mr. Schuster for an explanation before we take action.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I
I'm
like
sorry,
that.
Mr.
That has a wonderful ring to it. Well, that's,
I still slip into that because prior to coming here for 2 years, I was at a first-class township, which had a board of commissioners, and they don't have a chairman, they have a president. So for 2 years, I was saying Mr. President, and now, once in a while, I flip-flop.
sounds like you're buying later.
Mr. Chairman, this is budget amendment number 1. As you're aware, the second-class township code provides for budget amendments after the 3rd month of the fiscal year. This one has various minor general fund and library fund transfers. We are amending the Park and Rec budget for Warminster Day, allocation of capital reserve fund balance for the purchase of a vehicle, offsetting increases in revenue and expenditures in the highway traffic fund to reflect repairs and insurance payments received, and a highway aid fund shift of funds from supplies to contracted services for Warminster Heights plowing. All the details are laid out in the budget amendment and resolution.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt resolution 2018, amendment number 1, resolution 2018-21?
So moved.
Mr. Crowley, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Monroe, any further discussion from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion carries. We have no unfinished business tonight, so I'm going to move right into new business. Consider award of the Warminster Township Triaxle Trucking / Hauling Contract, CN 18-05 to RP Blair Equipment Rental Incorporated in the amount of $114,950 for all items under the base bid. Mr. Schuster, I know this is recommended by both you and the engineer.
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did go out to bid for the trucking and hauling contract. This is for the annual paving program for the transportation of the material to the roads for paving. The bid was the only bid received. After analysis, the recommendation is to go ahead and award the bid.
Okay. Is there a motion to award the bid to CN 18-05 to RP Blair Equipment Rental, Inc.?
So moved.
Mr. McPhillips, is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Frescatore, any further discussion? Now, this is for transportation of bringing the asphalt and things like that daily. They have to make daily runs, right, as you're paving? That's what I thought.
At a certain specified temperature, which is...
Right, exactly, right. Well, I know Blair's a pretty reputable contractor, so. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Any from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up, item 9, professionals reports, Township Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have my written report in case there's any questions. I'd like to remind everyone of the Memorial Day Parade coming up in a week or so. That's going to be a very fun event, so keep your calendars open and please join us out there. The Rubber Ducky Regatta, which Ms. Frescatore mentioned earlier, keep your eyes open for a potential announcement tomorrow. We have some serious concerns with the height of the creek there, and we may not be able to go ahead and do it that day. However, my understanding is that if we are unable to do the regatta this weekend, there's a postponement date which would be announced tomorrow if in fact they decide to postpone.
Will a decision be made tomorrow?
I've been told that a decision will be made tomorrow, correct?
So we'll be able to get that information out there.
That's when I said I would walk in the water.
I think you knew that. I think you got that memo earlier.
You are not walking in this water. This is
Not this one, no.
no. That's flowing pretty hard right now. So, quick update on the pension fund. We did get the first quarter results. We had a slight loss in first quarter. However, we still did beat the benchmark. Our loss was, I believe, about 0.5%, and the benchmark was 1%. So, still doing better than the market. Hopefully, things will turn around.
But we had a strong
We had,
end of 17.
we had a very strong 2017, 16 to 17% overall return for that year. As I remind everyone, we are invested for the long term, and over the long term, you will have flat markets, you will have down markets, and you'll have up markets. You don't panic. You pick your strategy and you stick by it. And the last thing I had, I'd like to thank the chief and the police department for all the extra traffic details that they've been running. The police have definitely been noticeable out there. We're just trying to make sure everyone stays safe, keeps the speeds down to a reasonable level, obeys the traffic laws. We just want to commend the police department for doing that. It has been noticed. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I go down Centennial Road every morning, and I notice the officers directing traffic in front of William Tennant High School. And I always wind a window down and say, who did you piss off? And every day they say the chief. How did you manage to get this detail? The chief. Keep up the good work, chief. They were out there in the pouring rain yesterday. Does anyone else have anything for Mr. Schuster or the chief?
No, I'm good with the chief. At our last meeting, we talked about the consideration of litigation with respect to the opiate crisis. The district attorney reached out to me, and there was a meeting that was requested.
Yes.
Did that take place yet?
I
Or?
believe it's next week. Do I have that? Next Friday, me and Mr. Bartle are going to meet with the district attorney to discuss that.
Sit in on behalf of the board. If you want to take that, take it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Sure.
It's next Friday.
Next Friday? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Let us, and then you'll report back to us at the next
Absolutely,
meeting.
yeah.
Okay.
I just want to go ahead and get as much information as possible from other parties that have initiated this type of lawsuit
Okay.
before bringing any recommendations or options to the board.
I would suggest Ben Salem, reaching out
Yep.
to Ben Salem.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. That's it.
You.
Yeah, no one else has anything for Mr. Schuster? I'll ask for the solicitor's report. Mr. Barr?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board should have a copy of my written report, which was submitted May 10. The only thing that I would mention, certainly I'm available to answer any questions you may have with respect to that report. The only thing that I would add for the public is under the 2017 trash lighting bill delinquency collections. You'll recall in my last report, I talked about us providing a 30-day grace period to those individuals that were delinquent. Since those delinquency notices went out on Friday, April 27, the 30-day period expires on May 28 of 2018. So during this grace period, they have an opportunity of paying that bill. If they don't, then the property will be liened according to the law. Okay?
Does anyone have anything for Mr. Bartle? No? Okay. Engineers report. Mrs. McNair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few updates for you to the May 2018 engineers report that was in your packets. The first subdivision and land development project is the Morrow project at 1020 West Bristol Road. You'll see on here that they were anticipated to present tonight, but due to some zoning issues, they request to be off the agenda tonight, and we'll be revising the plans before they come before you. And then another update, we have a new land development project, Nina Way in the Street Road Industrial Park. It's a small industrial project. In addition to the 1270 Mearns Douchers Road project, they'll also be on the agenda for the May 22nd Planning Commission.
Planning Commission.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all I have for you tonight, unless there's any questions.
Anyone have anything for Mrs. McNair? I do not. Okay. I'm going to move on to Township Manager announcement of upcoming agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're still undecided about the June 7th meeting right now. We were having some internal discussions about keeping that meeting date and dedicating it for Doucher's Farm. We're going to wait and see what happens with the Planning Commission and make a decision at that point whether or not to have it on June 7th. If it's not June 7th, likely it'll be June 21st. I hope to have some information out to the public by the middle or end of next week to let everyone know.
With plenty of notice.
With plenty of notice of
Because
which.
I know one of the board members has a potential conflict, and
Yep.
I'd really like to have all hands on deck for that.
Yep, no, it's going to be whatever the
That'd
board wants to do, but I think it's safe to say it's going to be either June 7th or June 21st.
Only I'm going to call out sick that night.
We already heard about,
I'll be in the National Park in South Dakota in June 21st.
So we're having on the 21st. You'll FaceTime in, though. I know.
But we need to make this decision not the day of that meeting, not the
Oh, yeah.
day before. We need to let the
no,
public know.
my intention is to, as of right now, the June 7th meeting is not canceled. I am going to be making an announcement later on this week. So after the Planning Commission meets, depending on whatever action they take, they may postpone it again, or they may, decide after hearing it for a couple hours, they need another meeting. I don't know what they're going to do, but after they go ahead and have their meeting, I'll have conversations with board members, and this, whatever the board wants to do, we will go ahead and schedule.
So by the end of next week?
Next week, it's going to be decided.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, one way or the other. Mayor 2, you already heard about, and we believe at the next agenda, there'll be a proposed update to the streetlight district ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. Next up is the second round of public comment. Is there any further comment from the public this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move right on to supervisor's comment. Ms. Frescatore.
I'd just like to thank my fellow board members for a very productive meeting tonight, and I think we got a lot accomplished, and some things are looking up, and some things we need to still work on, but I think we're working together as a team, and it's a great thing when you have a nice coalition, as Judy said. Thank you. That's it
Thank you,
for
Ms.
tonight,
Frescatore.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I usually make the Memorial Day Parade. I will not be able to make it this year.
What happened?
So, yeah, do not look for me in the golf cart. I was out there with my two girls last year, driving around in the parade. But I will be there with you guys in spirit, and I'm sure I know Mr. Crowley did a really good job of spreading the candy out, so you'll make up for
You
me.
don't want to spend money on candy, let's be honest about it.
I
Put all the
I was
pressure on
willing.
me.
Maybe I'll give you some candy. You
Okay,
can throw it
all
out
right,
for
all
me.
right, We're good then.
You'll be sorely missed.
I will. Thank you very much.
That's too bad, but we'll see you next year.
Mr. McPhillips?
Just want to wish everyone a happy Memorial Day, and Brian, we will give you a full report.
Thank you.
The parade.
Happy Memorial Day. Hey, if you got nothing to do on May 22nd, there's a school board meeting where they want to talk about the pools. I'm not telling you which way to feel about it, but they're debating whether or not to fill in the pools at the middle schools. For Warminster, that's Law College. For Upper South, it's Klinger. A lot of debate on Facebook, a lot of people reaching out, asking questions about it. But please, if you can go to the meeting, make your voice heard. That's the best way to do it. Facebook's a terrific way to reach people, but if you want to impact the way your public officials vote, trust me, show up at a meeting, and it has an impact. I also just want to wish to my son Dylan a happy 21st birthday.
All right, I saw that.
Yeah, he's legal now.
Congratulations, Dylan.
So,
We'll have a beer next time I see you.
yeah, and he just moved home from school for the summer, so hopefully the chief doesn't meet him anytime soon. He's a good kid. He's a much better kid than I was.
Chief's getting
Yeah, and then lastly, I just want to thank all the poll workers and all the volunteers and everybody who helped this election day go really smoothly in town. And congratulations to everybody who won their primaries moving on in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. I had something I forgot to announce earlier at announcements. Memorial Day morning, there is going to be a dedication and service. There's a cemetery on Newtown Road between Fox Run and the new townhouse development. Our friend Eric Fleischer, we had lunch with today, has worked incredibly hard on this. There's a small cemetery in there. There's people buried in there from the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, etc. Over the years, Mr. Fleischer has managed to raise enough money to put a monument there detailing each person that's buried there and who they were and their relationship. Thanks to Pulte Builders and Nancy's Farm, they've reconstructed the stone wall around it. There was a time capsule buried there in the late 1980s that someone took the liberty of stealing the plaque. So the Warminster Township has had a new plaque made up for that we will dedicate that day. So the VFW Honor Guard is going to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd like to invite anyone that's in the area to please stop in, and I think we'd like to do that every year going forward, to visit that cemetery in the morning Memorial Day. So I'm sure a notice will go out to the board members about that if you can make it at 8 a.m., please do. And I want to thank Eric Fleischer. He does an incredible amount of work on behalf of keep preserving the history of this township. But it's really interesting. If you get a chance to stop by this little burial ground, it's amazing that people that are buried in there. It's right in our backyards. So, at that, I want to look forward to seeing everyone at the Memorial Day Parade as well. The people at the VFW were good enough to host the post-parade where there's hot dogs and sodas and beverages for the adults available. Please stop in and say hello. And the last thing I have is beginning in June, we will go to casual attire for the summer. So we'll go back to business attire in the fall. So that's all I have. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. McPhillips, meeting adjourned. Thank you.